On Monday, The Economist finally published an article dated October 20th, arguing that America's vast mortgage market is withering. But the real story is not new at all. As I've been saying since 2021, the U.S. housing market is entering a structural crisis caused by one simple fact: mortgages have become almost impossible to obtain. For nearly a century, since the federal government began subsidizing home loans, mortgages have powered the American dream. To own a house was the core of that dream. But today, that engine is failing. America's total mortgage debt stands at $13.5 trillion, 44% of GDP, down 30 percentage points from the 2007-2009 financial crisis. And more importantly, the share of mortgage debt relative to household home equity has collapsed to 27%, the lowest in 65 years. America's housing market is no longer leveraged. It is dry as a mummified log. There is no excess water to squeeze out, no matter how high the Fed hikes rates. Why the housing market didn't collapse? Despite historic rate hikes. In 2021, when the Fed began 11 consecutive rapid rate hikes, most analysts predicted a housing crash. I said the opposite. Prices cannot fall because construction costs and supply constraints make declines impossible. Everything, from lumber and copper to electricity, wages, and rent, was rising sharply. How could houses become cheaper when every input cost was rising? Developers wouldn't build at a loss, so construction slowed dramatically. The result wasn't a crash, it was a freeze. Transactions fell to historic lows, but prices held firm because the market had no slack left. And I warned then, if builders stop today, 4 or 5 years later, prices will explode. Well, here we are, 4 years later. And that is exactly what's happening. Mortgages have become a privilege for the financially bulletproof. After the subprime crisis, regulation tightened so dramatically that qualifying for a mortgage became nearly impossible for ordinary Americans. Even borrowers with strong income and 800-plus credit scores struggled to get approved. By 2020, if you could obtain a mortgage at all, you were essentially a steel warrior, financially unbreakable. This has reshaped the entire market. In 2003, 35% of mortgages went to borrowers with credit scores under 720. By 2007, that share rose to 45%. Today, it is just 22%, due to severe post-crisis regulations and the Dodd-Frank Act. As a result, millions of qualified households simply cannot get a loan, even when rates were at historic lows. Mortgage issuance is now so low that since 2020, new mortgage originations account for less than 1% of total U.S. housing wealth, the lowest in modern history. Demand doesn't disappear, it becomes desperation. People can't choose not to live somewhere. When mortgages dried up, builders stopped building. Supply cratered. Existing homeowners refused to sell, locked into ultra-low pandemic-era rates. Renters faced skyrocketing rents due to fierce competition for too few units. From 2020 to 2023, rents surged across the country. Meanwhile, the 10-year Treasury jumped from 1% to 5%, pushing mortgage payments for new buyers from about $1,000 a month to over $2,100. The result, a perfect storm of low supply, impossible financing, and relentless demographic pressure. A crisis made worse by policy paralysis. Developers have responded rationally, not by building for buyers, but by building for renters. Companies like AMH, formerly Amherst, now construct entire neighborhoods of single-family homes designed exclusively for long-term rental. They are serving millions of households who, 30 years ago, would have easily bought homes, but today are shut out of the mortgage market. Yet these institutional landlords are now political targets. Several states have attempted to restrict institutional home purchases, blaming them for rising prices. But this attacks the symptom, not the cause. The real problem is the regulatory environment that prevents ordinary Americans from qualifying for mortgages and prevents builders from producing enough homes. The numbers are staggering. In 2023, the U.S. completed only 1.6 million private housing units. The real need is 5 to 6 million units a year. The cumulative shortage has reached 10+ million homes. This is not a bubble. This is structural scarcity. Why the market cannot crash? Even if the stock market does, even if the US stock market collapses, even if a recession hits, home prices cannot fall meaningfully because 1. Supply is catastrophically insufficient, not a minor shortage, an existential one. 2. Homeowners are locked into ultra-low rates and will not sell. They simply cannot move. Their financing costs would triple. 3. Only the financially strongest households can get mortgages. These borrowers do not default easily. 4. The alternative to owning a home is sleeping in a car. America cannot allow millions to become homeless without risking genuine social unrest. If 5 to 10 million Americans were forced into homelessness, it wouldn't be a housing cycle. It would be a political revolution. That is how fragile the situation truly is. Trump, the election, and what comes next. With inflation dominating voter concerns, Trump has floated ideas such as 50-year mortgages, eliminating capital gains taxes on home sales, allowing crypto-backed collateral, reducing or eliminating property taxes, as Florida is exploring. But none of this addresses the core issue: mortgage access and supply. Even if bold reforms began today, results would not appear until 2028-2029. Every proposal, even from the New York Times, admits there is no short-term solution. This crisis should have been addressed in 2021-2022. It wasn't. Now the next president, Trump or otherwise, will inherit a housing time bomb. The outlook: 4 more years of rising prices. Given current realities, mortgage scarcity, construction stagnation, regulatory constraints, demographic pressure, builders shifting to rentals, the U.S. housing market cannot collapse. The worst case is stagnation. The base case is continued appreciation. Waiting for prices to fall is fantasy. Even if the stock market crashes, housing will hold, because supply is utterly inadequate and cannot catch up for years. Unless America wants millions sleeping in cars and the political chaos that would follow, the housing market has no path to collapse.